My name is Hattie, and at 68 years old, I never expected to become the villain in my son-in-law's story. As a retired real estate investor who built my business from scratch after losing my husband too young, I thought gifting my only daughter Amanda a beautiful villa for her wedding to Jackson would be the perfect start to their marriage. But when unexpected guests arrived with no intention of leaving, I watched my daughter transform from a vibrant artist into a hollow-eyed servant in her own home. Before I dive into this heartbreaking story, let me know where you're watching from and tap that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for someone you love. Life has a way of teaching you strength when you least expect it. I learned that lesson at 32 when my husband Thomas died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving me with our 7-year-old daughter Amanda and a mountain of medical bills. We had been high school sweethearts with big dreams but modest savings. His life insurance barely covered the funeral expenses. I remember sitting at our kitchen table, that first night alone, Amanda finally asleep upstairs, staring at our bills and property tax notices. Thomas had been a construction foreman with a steady income but not enough to leave us comfortable. I had worked part-time as a receptionist at a real estate office while Amanda was in school. That night, through tears and determination, I made a promise to myself and to Thomas that our daughter would never want for anything. By morning I had a plan. I approached my boss at the real estate office and asked him to mentor me. Harold was a gruff 70-year-old who had seen the market crash and rise more times than he could count. He took a chance on me, and within a year I had my license and was learning every aspect of the business. I started small, saving every commission, and living frugally in our modest home. When I had enough, I purchased my first fixer-upper property. Thanks to Thomas's friends from the construction business who remembered his kindness, I got discounted labor and materials. I rented that first property and used the income to help with Amanda's needs and to save for the next investment. By the time Amanda entered high school, I had built a respectable portfolio of 15 properties across Springfield. I made sure Amanda never felt the financial strain, but I also taught her the value of hard work. She would help me stage houses for showings, her artistic eye catching details I would miss. Amanda grew into a beautiful young woman with her father's gentle blue eyes and artistic talent that surpassed anything I could have imagined. She majored in fine arts at college, specializing in watercolor landscapes that captured the feeling of a place rather than just its appearance. I supported her creative pursuits completely, having worked so hard precisely so she could follow her passions without financial worry. When Amanda turned 27, she met Jackson at a gallery, showing her work. He was 32, clean-cut, with an easy smile and confident manner. He worked in financial services, or so he claimed, though the details always seemed vague whenever I asked specific questions. He came from what he described as a close-knit family, though, interestingly, they never seemed to be available to meet me during the 8 months they dated. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Jackson showered Amanda with attention flowers and compliments about her artwork. He seemed genuinely interested in her creative process, asking questions and encouraging her to pursue bigger exhibitions. I watched my normally reserved daughter blossom under his attention, and while I had some reservations about the speed of their relationship, I kept them mostly to myself. There were small things that gave me pause. The way Jackson would sometimes answer questions for Amanda, how he would make slightly dismissive comments about her more experimental pieces, steering her toward more commercial subjects, the way his phone calls would end abruptly when I entered the room. But Amanda was happier than I had seen her in years, and I told myself that no relationship is perfect. When they announced their engagement after only 8 months of dating, I swallowed my concerns and focused on Amanda's radiant smile. She deserved happiness, and if Jackson was her choice, I would support her fully. The wedding planning began immediately with Jackson having surprisingly strong opinions about everything from the venue to the guest list. When the topic of where they would live came up, I saw an opportunity to provide them with security while also giving them independence. Among my properties was a beautiful Mediterranean-style villa in a gated community about 20 minutes from my home. It had 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen that opened to a sunlit living room, and a separate studio space perfect for Amanda's artwork. I had been renting it to executives on short-term contracts, but it had been vacant for 2 months. When I offered it as their wedding gift, Amanda burst into tears of joy. Jackson seemed momentarily stunned, then recovered with enthusiastic thanks, hugging me tightly and calling me the most generous mother-in-law a man could ask for. I had the property thoroughly renovated before the wedding, adding custom touches I knew Amanda would love, including special lighting in the studio and built-in easels. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather in early June. The ceremony was held in the gardens of a historic estate with 100 guests in attendance. Amanda was breathtaking in a simple gown that highlighted her natural beauty. I walked her down the aisle, my heart full of memories of her father and wishes that he could have seen this day. During my speech at the reception, I presented them with the deed and keys to the villa. I had transferred ownership to Amanda's name alone, a standard practice in my business dealings. Jackson raised an eyebrow at this but quickly masked it with a smile. I explained that this was simply how all my property transactions were handled, and he seemed to accept this explanation. The first few weeks after they returned from their honeymoon in Italy seemed idyllic. Amanda called me daily with excitement about decorating their new home, sending photos of furniture arrangements, and asking advice about paint colors. She set up her studio immediately and talked about a new series of paintings inspired by their honeymoon landscapes. It was around the 1-month mark when I began noticing subtle shifts. Amanda's calls became less frequent, and when we did speak, she seemed distracted. When I asked about her artwork, she mentioned being too busy setting up the house to really get started. Jackson had also suggested they wait to make major art supply purchases until they had a better handle on their monthly expenses, despite the fact that I knew Amanda had received a substantial inheritance from her grandfather when she turned 25. When I visited for dinner 6 weeks after they returned, I noticed Jackson answering financial questions I had directed to Amanda. When I specifically asked her about how she was managing the household accounts, she looked quickly at Jackson before responding vaguely that he was better with numbers, so he was handling all of that for now. It seemed like a small thing at the time, but looking back, it was the first visible thread in a carefully woven trap. The real changes began almost exactly 2 months after the wedding. Amanda called me on a Friday afternoon, her voice carrying an undercurrent of tension I had never heard before. "Mom, Jackson's parents are coming to visit this weekend," she said, trying to sound casual. "They're having some work done on their house, so they might stay a little longer than the weekend, maybe a week or so." "That's nice, honey," I replied, thinking it would be good to finally meet them after all this time. "Would you like me to come over and help you prepare? I could bring some food." "No," the answer came too quickly. "I mean, no thank you. Jackson says they're very particular about first impressions and he wants me to handle everything myself." I ignored the warning bells in my head. "Well, I look forward to meeting them soon." "Of course," she said, but made no specific plans for when that would happen. 2 weeks later, Amanda and I met for lunch. She looked tired with dark shadows under her eyes. When I asked about her in-laws, she sighed. "They're still with us. Their contractor found mold or something, so the work is taking longer than expected." She pushed her salad around her plate without eating much. "They're very nice, but they have certain ways they like things done." "Like what?" I asked gently. "Mrs. Thornton likes breakfast, served promptly at 7:30. Fresh squeezed orange juice not from a carton. Mr. Thornton needs the newspaper ironed, so the ink doesn't get on his fingers." She gave a small laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Just little things." I reached for her hand. "Honey, why are you ironing newspapers and squeezing oranges? They're guests in your home." Amanda withdrew her hand. "They're family, Mom. And Jackson says it's important I make a good impression." Before I could press further, she changed the subject to ask about my garden. 3 days later, Amanda called again. Her voice was even more strained. "Jackson's brother Evan and his wife Tiffany are coming to stay with us for a while," she said flatly. "They have 2 children. Their apartment lease ended, and they're between homes." "Amanda," I said carefully, "that villa has 4 bedrooms and with Jackson's parents already there." "The kids can share a room," she said quickly. "It's just temporary, Mom. Family helps family. That's what Jackson says." "Is Jackson's family helping you?" I couldn't stop myself from asking. There was a long pause. "I need to go," she finally said. "Tiffany and Evan will be here soon and I need to prepare the rooms." When I visited 2 weeks later, I barely recognized my daughter. She moved through the house like a ghost, constantly in motion. The beautiful villa I had gifted them now felt crowded and tense. Jackson's mother Margaret sat in the living room, directing Amanda on how to arrange flowers, while his father Robert had commandeered the dining table with papers spread everywhere for what he called important business matters. The two children aged 8 and 6 raced through the house screaming while their mother Tiffany talked loudly on her phone in the kitchen, ignoring the mess they were making. Evan was nowhere to be seen. I pulled Amanda into the pantry under the guise of helping with snacks. "Sweetheart, this doesn't seem temporary," I whispered. "How long have they all been here now?" Amanda looked nervously toward the door. "Mom, please don't start. Jackson says family sticks together during hard times. His parents' house renovation is more complicated than they thought, and Evan is between jobs." "But what about your art? Your studio?" Pain flashed across her face. "I'll get back to it soon. Right now the family needs me here." The word family sounded rehearsed, as though she had been told to think of them that way, rather than coming to that conclusion herself. I stayed for dinner watching, as Amanda served everyone before sitting down herself, only to get up repeatedly to fetch things for Jackson's parents. No one thanked her. No one helped. Jackson beamed with pride at his mother when she commented on how well he had trained his wife. I left with a sick feeling in my stomach, but Amanda insisted everything was fine when I tried to talk to her privately. "It's just temporary," she repeated, like a mantra she was trying to convince herself of. A month later, when I called to invite Amanda to lunch, she declined, saying she needed to prepare for more guests. I couldn't keep the shock from my voice. "Who now?" "Jackson's aunt and uncle need a place to stay while they're house hunting in the area," she explained, fatigue evident in every word. "Just for a few weeks." "Amanda, this is getting out of hand. That's your home." "It's our home," she corrected. "And Jackson says family comes first." When I finally visited again after 2 weeks of Amanda canceling our plans, I found a transformed house. What had once been a serene, tastefully decorated villa now looked like a crowded boarding house. Shoes cluttered the entryway, mismatched towels hung from bathroom doors, and the beautiful kitchen island was covered with cereal boxes and unwashed dishes. Jackson's mother had redecorated the living room with her own family photos, replacing the artwork Amanda had carefully chosen. His father's papers had spread from the dining table to a makeshift office in what had been a reading nook. The aunt and uncle had taken over the guest suite, complaining loudly about the mattress being too firm. But the most shocking change was when I asked to see Amanda's latest artwork. Her eyes darted nervously to Jackson, who stepped in smoothly. "Amanda's studio is temporarily being used by my brother's kids," he explained with a dismissive wave. "Children need space, and it's not like she was using it regularly. She understands." The look on my daughter's face told a different story, but she said nothing. Later, when I managed a moment alone with her in the laundry room where she was sorting what appeared to be everyone's clothing, I asked directly, "Amanda, where are your art supplies, your canvases?" She folded a shirt with mechanical precision. "In storage for now." "It makes sense, Mom. The kids need a play area, and art supplies aren't safe around children." "But your art is your passion, your identity." She gave me a look I'll never forget, empty and defeated. "My identity now is being a good wife and sister-in-law. That's what matters to Jackson." I left that day knowing something was deeply wrong but unsure how to fix it. My vibrant, talented daughter was disappearing before my eyes, replaced by an overworked housekeeper in a home that no longer felt like hers. 3 months after Jackson's parents first arrived, I barely recognized my daughter when she finally agreed to meet me for coffee. Amanda had lost at least 15 pounds from her already slender frame. Her once shiny brown hair hung limp around her face, which was pale with dark circles under her eyes. Her hands, once steady from years of detailed painting, trembled slightly as she lifted her cup. "I've missed you," I said gently. "You've canceled our last 4 lunch dates." "I'm sorry," she replied, her voice flat. "There's just always so much to do at home. 7 people create a lot of laundry and dishes." 7. I couldn't hide my shock. I thought it was 6 with Jackson's aunt and uncle. Amanda stared into her coffee. Evan's friend Neil needed a place to crash for a while. He's sleeping on the couch. I reached for her hand. Honey, this isn't right. That's your home. You and Jackson should be starting your life together, not running a hotel for his entire extended family. She pulled her hand away. You don't understand. Family helps family. Jackson says we're blessed to have the space to help everyone through their rough patches. And when do their rough patches end? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. It's been over 3 months now. Amanda checked her watch anxiously. I need to get back. Margaret likes lunch at noon exactly, and I'm trying a new recipe she gave me. Later that same week, I received a text from Beth, Amanda's best friend since college. We had always been close, and she had been the maid of honor at Amanda's wedding. Hattie, I'm worried about Amanda. She's canceled on me 5 times in the last month, and when I drive by the house, I see all these people coming and going. Is everything okay with her and Jackson? I called Beth immediately. She confirmed what I'd feared. Amanda had become increasingly isolated, declining invitations and making excuses. The one time Beth had dropped by unannounced, Jackson had intercepted her at the door, explaining that Amanda was too busy with family obligations to socialize. Alarmed, I decided to make a surprise visit the following day. When I arrived at 11 in the morning, Amanda answered the door in a bathrobe, looking startled and embarrassed. Mom, I wasn't expecting you. Before she could block my entry, I stepped inside, taking in the chaos. The beautiful home was now cluttered with mismatched furniture that must have belonged to the various family members. Laundry sat in unfolded piles on the sofa. Fast food containers littered the coffee table. I just wanted to check on you, I said casually. I was in the neighborhood. Amanda glanced nervously toward the kitchen, where I could hear Jackson's mother giving loud instructions to someone. It's not a good time, Amanda whispered. I overslept and Margaret is upset because breakfast was late. I still need to clean up before starting lunch preparations. I followed the sound of Margaret's voice to the kitchen, where the older woman was criticizing the way someone had loaded the dishwasher. She stopped abruptly when she saw me. Hattie, she said with a tight smile, what an unexpected surprise. I thought I'd help Amanda with lunch, I replied pleasantly, noting how the woman's eyes narrowed. That's thoughtful but unnecessary. Amanda and I have a system. I stayed anyway, watching in growing horror as my daughter was treated like a servant in her own home. Margaret criticized everything from how Amanda chopped vegetables to the brand of olive oil she used. Jackson's father, Robert, wandered in, demanding to know where his clean shirts were, completely ignoring my presence. The final shock came when I asked to see Amanda's art studio, her eyes filled with tears. You can't, she whispered. Jackson's aunt and uncle moved their bedroom in there. They said the guest room was too small for all their things. What about your supplies? Your easels? In the garage, she admitted. But it's too hot out there to paint comfortably. I managed to get Amanda alone in the backyard under the pretense of checking the garden. Once out of earshot, I confronted her directly. Amanda, this is abuse. They've taken over your home and your life. She wrapped her arms around herself defensively. They're family, Mom. They've had some bad luck. I need to support Jackson by supporting his family. Does Jackson support you? Does he stand up for you when his mother criticizes everything you do? Her silence was answer enough. What about your inheritance? Please tell me you're not supporting all these people financially. Amanda's face crumpled. Jackson says we need to pool our resources right now. His dad's business venture is about to take off, and Evan is close to finding a job. It's temporary. That's what you said 3 months ago, I reminded her gently. She looked away. I should get back inside. Margaret will be wondering where I am. That evening, I received a text from Jackson, not Amanda. Please don't upset my wife with your visits. She's very busy taking care of our family and doesn't need the added stress of your disapproval. The next day, I drove by and counted 3 additional cars in the driveway. Through the front window, I could see Amanda carrying a tray of food to Jackson's father, who didn't even look up from his newspaper as she set it beside him. When she didn't respond to my calls for 3 days, I contacted Beth again. She agreed to check on Amanda under the guise of dropping off some information about an art exhibition. Beth's report was heartbreaking. She had found Amanda doing laundry at 10 at night, exhausted but still working. The house was now full of Jackson's family's possessions. Pictures of their relatives had replaced all of Amanda's artwork on the walls. When Beth asked about Amanda's painting, Jackson's mother had laughed and said, "She has more important responsibilities now than playing with paints." Most concerning was Beth's observation that Amanda seemed afraid to speak freely, constantly glancing at Jackson's family members before answering any question. The final straw came 2 weeks later when I received a call from Amanda. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "They threw them away," she cried. "All of them." "Who threw what away?" I asked, alarmed. "My special brushes, the ones Dad gave me before he died. I had them in a box in the garage and Jackson's nephew was playing out there. When I went to check, everything was in the trash. The brushes, my paints, even my finished canvases. When I got upset, Jackson said I was being selfish, that they were just material things and family matters more." In that moment, I knew this had gone beyond inconsiderate houseguests. This was systematic emotional abuse. My daughter was being erased from her own life, piece by piece. "Amanda," I said firmly, "I'm coming to get you." "No," she replied, suddenly sounding frightened. "Jackson would be furious. I just needed to vent. I'll figure something out." "At least meet me for lunch tomorrow," I pleaded. "I can't," she whispered. "Margaret has a doctor's appointment and I need to drive her." After we hung up, I sat in my living room looking at photos of Amanda growing up. Her first art show in middle school. The proud smile when she sold her first painting in college. The joy on her wedding day. Now she was a shell of herself trapped in a nightmare I had unwittingly helped create by giving them the villa. It was time to consult a professional. The following morning, I called Jackson directly asking to meet him for coffee to discuss my concerns about Amanda. To my surprise, he agreed readily, suggesting an upscale cafe near his office. Jackson arrived looking impeccable in a tailored suit, not a hair out of place. He greeted me warmly, all charm and solicitous attention, pulling out my chair and insisting on paying for my latte. If I hadn't seen Amanda's deterioration with my own eyes, I might have been fooled by his performance. "I'm worried about Amanda," I began, once we were settled. "She seems exhausted and unhappy. Your family has been staying with you for nearly 4 months now, and it seems to be taking a toll on her." Jackson's pleasant expression didn't waver, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Hattie," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "I understand your concern as her mother, but I think you're misinterpreting the situation. Amanda is happier than ever being surrounded by family. She grew up as an only child, so having a bustling full house is new to her, but she's adjusting beautifully." "She's lost weight," I pressed. "She's given up her art. These aren't signs of happiness, Jackson." He waved a dismissive hand. "A little weight loss looks good on her. As for the art, that was just a hobby. She's finding real fulfillment in creating a home for our family." "It wasn't a hobby. It was her passion, her career." Jackson leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Hattie, with all due respect, I think you projected your own unfulfilled artistic ambitions onto Amanda. She's told me many times she was only painting to please you." The lie was so blatant, it took my breath away. Amanda had been drawing and painting since she could hold a crayon, long before I had any interest in art myself. "That's not true," I said firmly. His smile tightened. "Maybe you don't know your daughter as well as you think. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting to get to." As he stood to leave, I made one last attempt. "When are your parents planning to return to their own home?" Jackson paused. "Their renovation is complex. Good contractors are hard to find. We're happy to help as long as needed." "And your brother? His friend sleeping on your couch? Your aunt and uncle?" Something ugly flashed across his face before he composed himself. "Family takes care of family, Hattie. I wouldn't expect you to understand being on your own for so long." With that parting shot, he left, leaving me more concerned than ever. My next strategy was to observe the entire family dynamic. I invited everyone to a dinner at an upscale restaurant, ostensibly to celebrate Jackson's birthday. To my surprise, they accepted. The dinner was illuminating in the worst possible way. I watched as Amanda jumped to fulfill every request from Jackson's family. More water for his mother, another bread basket for his father. Cutting meat for the children while her own food grew cold. Jackson beamed with pride at his family's behavior, completely blind to Amanda's exhaustion. Most telling was when Amanda began to share a small anecdote about an art class she once took. Jackson's mother interrupted her. "Amanda dear, nobody wants to hear about your little hobby. Tell everyone about that lovely roast you made yesterday." Amanda immediately stopped talking about her art, her eyes downcast as she obediently described a cooking technique Jackson's mother had taught her. After dinner, I tried to speak with Jackson's parents, directly following them to their car while Amanda was in the restroom. "Robert, Margaret," I began politely, "I wonder if you've given any thought to when you might return to your own home. The renovation must be nearly complete by now." Margaret's pleasant mask slipped slightly. "Our contractor is extremely unreliable. These things take time." "It's been over 4 months," I pointed out. Robert stepped forward. "We're helping the kids out. Jackson needs family around him, always has. But Amanda needs space to pursue her own interests as well." Margaret's smile was cold. "Amanda is a wife now. Her interest should be caring for her husband and his family. You really filled her head with some unrealistic notions about art as a career." Before I could respond, Jackson appeared with Amanda, effectively ending the conversation. The next day, I contacted my longtime attorney Richard Goldstein, who had helped me build my real estate business. I explained the situation and asked about my legal options. "The gift deed," Richard mused, looking through his files. "Let me check the exact language we used." After some searching, he pulled out the document with a triumphant smile. "Here it is. Hattie, you always insist on certain protective clauses in your property, transfers even to family. In this case, we included a conditional gift clause." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked. "It means the property was gifted to Amanda specifically, not to the couple jointly. Additionally, there's a clause stating that any permanent residence beyond the primary owner must be approved in writing, and any structural modifications require your consent as the original owner. So technically, all these people living there are in violation of the deed terms," Richard confirmed. "As is the conversion of designated spaces like her studio. You have grounds to reclaim the property, if you choose to go that route." It was a nuclear option, one I wasn't ready to deploy yet. First, I needed one more attempt to reason with Amanda. I invited her to lunch at her favorite cafe, a small bistro where we had celebrated many special occasions. To my surprise, she came alone, though she checked her phone constantly throughout our meal. "Amanda," I said gently, "I need you to be honest with me. Are you truly happy with your living situation?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly. "It's complicated, Mom. Jackson needs his family right now. They're going through a tough time." "What about what you need? Your art, your space, your peace of mind?" She glanced down at her barely touched salad. "Sometimes marriage means sacrifice." "Sacrifice should go both ways," I countered. "What is Jackson sacrificing for you?" Her silence spoke volumes. "Honey, this isn't normal or healthy. They've taken over your home, your finances, and your identity." "You don't understand," she whispered. "If I complain, Jackson gets so angry. He says I'm selfish and ungrateful. That I don't understand what family means, because it was just you and me growing up." "That's manipulation, Amanda." "They're not bad people," she insisted weakly. "They're just set in their ways." I reached for her hand. "Your father would be heartbroken to see you, like this, giving up your dreams, your art." At the mention of her father, something broke in Amanda. Tears streamed down her face. "I found my brushes in the trash," she sobbed quietly. "The ones Dad gave me for my 16th birthday. Jackson's nephew had been playing in the garage and threw them away. When I got upset, Jackson's mother said I was being materialistic, and that I needed to grow up and stop clinging to childish hobbies." Rage flooded through me, but I kept my voice calm. "What did Jackson say when this happened?" "He agreed with her." Amanda admitted, her voice small. "He said if I was a proper wife, I'd be focused on our family, not on painting pretty pictures that nobody wants to buy anyway." In that moment, my decision was made. This was no longer about house guests overstaying their welcome. It was about rescuing my daughter from emotional abuse. "Amanda," I said firmly, "I want you to come stay with me for a while." Fear flashed across her face. "I can't. Jackson would never allow it. Besides, who would take care of everyone? They're adults. They can take care of themselves." She shook her head frantically. "You don't understand. Jackson controls all our accounts now, even my inheritance. I don't have access to anything without his approval." This was worse than I thought. Financial control was a classic abuse tactic. As we were speaking, her phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and immediately stood up, gathering her purse. "I have to go. Margaret needs me to pick up some special tea she likes. It's only available at that specialty shop across town. Amanda, please." "I'm sorry, Mom. I have to go." I watched her hurry away, shoulders hunched, a shadow of the confident woman she had once been. When I paid our bill, I noticed she had barely touched her food. That evening, I received a call from Beth. She was in tears. "I just drove by Amanda's house," she said, her voice shaking. "There were workmen there tearing out the garden you helped her plant. When I stopped to ask what was happening, Jackson's father said they were putting in a hot tub and extended patio for entertaining. Hattie Amanda loved that garden." It was the final straw. They were methodically erasing every trace of my daughter's identity from what should have been her home. I called Richard immediately. "I need to enforce that clause in the deed," I told him. "I want them out." "All of them?" he asked, "including Amanda and Jackson?" I paused, considering. "No, just his family. But I need you to do something else for me first." "What's that?" "I need documentation of Amanda's financial situation. If Jackson has taken control of her inheritance, that's financial abuse. I want everything ready before we make our move." The next day, Richard's team went to work. What they discovered was shocking. Jackson had not only taken control of Amanda's inheritance, he had been systematically transferring money from their joint accounts to accounts only he could access. He had taken out loans in Amanda's name for his father's supposed business ventures. Credit cards in her name showed charges for expensive electronics, golf clubs, and men's clothing. Meanwhile, I had hired a private investigator to document the current state of the villa. The photos showed unauthorized construction conversion of designated spaces and 7 additional residents beyond Amanda and Jackson. The investigator also discovered that Jackson's parents' home showed no signs of renovation work whatsoever. It appeared to be in perfect condition, simply sitting empty. Armed with this information, I was ready to act. The woman who had spent decades building a real estate empire from nothing was about to reclaim what was rightfully her daughter's. After consulting with Richard, we developed a careful strategy. Timing and presentation would be everything. We needed to catch Jackson and his family off guard while ensuring Amanda's safety. I began by having Richard prepare all the necessary legal documents. The original deed with the conditional gift clause highlighted documentation of the unauthorized residence, photographs of the property modifications, and a formal notice to vacate. Simultaneously, I had a forensic accountant prepare a detailed report of the financial abuse money transferred from Amanda's accounts, loans taken in her name, and credit cards opened without her knowledge. The picture it painted was damning. For the confrontation itself, Richard advised me to maintain absolute calm and to focus on the legal aspects rather than the emotional ones. "This is business," he reminded me. "Treat it that way, and you'll be more effective." I chose a Tuesday evening for our move, knowing from Amanda's weekly calls that everyone would be present for the family dinner Jackson's mother insisted upon. I dressed carefully in a conservative navy blue suit, the same one I wore to important business meetings. I wanted to project authority and confidence. Richard would accompany me, along with a notary public, to witness any documents that might need to be signed. I also hired a security specialist to wait discreetly outside just in case things became volatile. I called Amanda that morning with a simple request. "I'd like to join your family dinner tonight," I said pleasantly. "I have some news I want to share with everyone." Tonight she sounded nervous. "Margaret has the menu planned for exactly 9 people. "Then it will be 10, I replied firmly. "I'll bring a bottle of wine, 7 o'clock. After a pause, she agreed, promising to let Jackson know. When I arrived at precisely 7, dressed impeccably with my leather portfolio tucked under my arm, I could see the confusion on Jackson's face. This was not the casual mother-in-law he was accustomed to. "Hattie," he greeted me with a forced smile. "What's this news you're so eager to share?" "Let's wait until everyone is seated for dinner," I replied pleasantly. "It concerns the whole family." Margaret had outdone herself with the meal, or rather she had pushed Amanda to outdo herself. The table was beautifully set with china that I recognized as a wedding gift to Amanda from her godmother. Amanda looked exhausted, but had clearly made an effort with her appearance, likely at Jackson's insistence for family dinner. Jackson's father Robert sat at the head of the table, a position that should have been Jackson's in his own home. Jackson's brother Evan and his wife Tiffany were there with their 2 children who were allowed to bring tablets to the table. Jackson's aunt and uncle Louise and Frank completed the group along with Neil, the friend who was supposedly just crashing for a few days but had now been there for weeks. I waited until the main course had been served and everyone was eating before I opened my portfolio. "I want to thank everyone for including me in your family dinner," I began pleasantly. "As you know, this villa was a wedding gift from me to Amanda." Jackson's father Robert cut in. "Yes, very generous. We've made good use of it." I smiled thinly. "That's actually what I wanted to discuss. I've brought copies of the original deed for everyone's reference." I began passing out the documents, while continuing to speak in a calm, business-like tone. "You'll notice on page 3, section 12, there's a conditional gift clause. It specifies that the property was deeded to Amanda specifically, not to the couple jointly. It also requires written approval for any permanent residents beyond the primary owner, and written consent for structural modifications." The mood at the table shifted instantly. Jackson's mother put down her fork with a clatter. "What exactly are you saying?" Hattie Jackson asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I met his gaze steadily. "I'm saying that according to section 12.4 of the deed of gift, this property was conditionally granted to Amanda alone, and unauthorized permanent residents, or modifications, without written consent, constitute breach of contract requiring vacation of premises within 30 days. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda looked stunned, her eyes wide as she processed what I was saying. Jackson's father was the first to recover. "This is ridiculous," he blustered, his face reddening. "You can't just evict family. We've been living here for months." "Without written consent," I repeated calmly, "which constitutes a breach of the conditional gift terms." Jackson's mother attempted a different approach, her eyes suddenly brimming with tears. "Where will we go? Our house has been under renovation. We'll be homeless." I removed another document from my portfolio. "According to county records, no permits for renovation have been pulled for your property address in the past 2 years. Additionally, a visual inspection yesterday confirmed your house appears to be in perfect condition, just sitting empty." Jackson slammed his hand on the table. "This is outrageous. You gave this house to us as a wedding gift. You can't take it back." "I gave it to Amanda," I corrected him. "And I'm not taking it back. I'm simply enforcing the terms that protect her ownership." "Amanda is my wife," he snarled. "What's hers is mine." I turned to my daughter, whose face had gone pale. "Amanda, did you know that in the past 6 months, over $200,000 has been transferred from your accounts? That loans totaling $150,000 have been taken out in your name?" Her shocked expression answered my question. Jackson leapt to his feet. "That's our private financial business. You have no right." "I have every right when my daughter is being financially abused," I replied, my voice still steady. "The forensic accounting report has been provided to the authorities. You might want to consult an attorney, Jackson." His mother tried another tactic. "Amanda, sweetheart, you can't let your mother do this to us. We're your family now." For the first time in months, I saw a flash of the old Amanda in my daughter's eyes. "Family," she said quietly. "Family doesn't throw away cherished possessions. Family doesn't criticize every meal I cook while refusing to help. Family doesn't take over my art studio without asking." Jackson's face twisted with rage. "Shut up, Amanda. You're embarrassing yourself." I stood up, slowly maintaining eye contact with Jackson. You have 30 days to vacate this property. All of you except Amanda. The security cameras being installed tomorrow will document compliance or lack thereof. You can't do this, Jackson's father sputtered. We'll fight you in court. Please do, I replied calmly. I've included the contact information from my attorney. He's quite looking forward to presenting evidence of financial elder abuse against your son, unauthorized property modifications, and the interesting fact that you've been claiming this address for tax benefits while still maintaining your original residence. Jackson's Uncle Frank, who had remained silent until now, stood up. This is a family matter. You need to leave. Actually, I replied as the original property owner with a conditional gift clause, I have more legal right to be here than anyone except Amanda. I turned to my daughter. Amanda, if you want to pack some things and come with me tonight, my guest room is ready. Jackson grabbed Amanda's arm roughly. She's staying here. She's my wife. For the first time, I allowed some of my anger to show. Remove your hand from my daughter or the police officer waiting outside will have cause to enter. His eyes widened in surprise and he released her arm. Amanda looked from Jackson to me, years of conditioning warring with the spark of independence that was finally reigniting. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course, I replied, gathering my documents. The choice is yours, Amanda, but know that your home is legally protected now, and no one can force you to support 7 additional adults without your consent. As I walked to the door, Jackson followed me hissing under his breath. This isn't over. Amanda will choose me and my family. She always does what I tell her. I turned to face him one last time. That's where you're wrong, Jackson. You may have suppressed her spirit temporarily, but you've never actually broken it. My daughter is stronger than you know. The look of uncertainty that flashed across his face told me he wasn't nearly as confident as he pretended to be. As I drove home, I felt both relieved and anxious. I had set the wheels in motion, but the hardest part was yet to come. Amanda would have to find her own strength to break free from the psychological grip Jackson and his family had on her. I could only hope that by removing the legal and financial barriers to her independence, I had given her the space she needed to rediscover herself. The 30 days that followed were some of the most tense and emotionally draining of my life. Jackson and his family did not go quietly. The morning after the dinner confrontation, Jackson's father showed up at my home, alternating between threatening legal action and pleading for me to reconsider. I remained firm, referring him to Richard. When he realized I wouldn't budge, his true colors showed. You've always been jealous of our family's influence over Amanda, he snarled. You're a lonely old woman who can't stand that your daughter prefers us to you. I simply closed the door on his tirade. Amanda called me later that day, her voice shaking. They're all so angry, Mom. Jackson says I betrayed him by not telling him about the deed conditions. Did you know about them? I asked gently. No, she admitted. He never let me see the paperwork. He took everything to handle himself. That should tell you something, I pointed out. There was a long pause. Jackson says, if I support him and his family staying, he'll forgive me. Forgive you for what exactly? You've done nothing wrong. Another pause. I don't know what to do, Mom. You don't have to decide everything today, I assured her. But please consider coming to stay with me while you sort through your feelings. She declined, saying she needed to keep the peace for now. Over the next week, I received reports from the security company I had hired to monitor the property. Jackson's family was making no moves to pack or leave. Instead, they were continuing to act as if nothing had changed. 10 days after the confrontation, Beth called me in a panic. Hattie, I just spoke to Amanda. Jackson's mother went through her phone and saw our text conversations. She deleted my number and all her contacts except for family members. Jackson took her phone and is only allowing her to use it when he's present. This was a serious escalation of controlling behavior. I immediately called Richard, who advised me to document everything but not to intervene directly yet, as it might make things worse for Amanda. The turning point came 2 weeks into the 30-day period. Amanda showed up at my door at 11 at night, tears streaming down her face. They had a family meeting, she sobbed as I led her to the sofa. Without me, I overheard them planning to contest the deed, saying I was mentally unstable and had been manipulated by you. Jackson said, if I knew what was good for me, I'd sign whatever papers they put in front of me. I held her as she cried, feeling both heartbreak at her pain and relief that she had finally come to me. What made you decide to leave tonight? I asked, when she had calmed somewhat. She took a deep, shuddering breath. Jackson gave me an ultimatum. He said I needed to choose between you or his family. He said if I chose you, I was choosing to destroy our marriage. And what did you say? A small, fierce smile crossed her face. I said that he had already destroyed our marriage when he turned me into a servant in my own home and threw away my father's gifts to me. I couldn't have been prouder. What happened then? He got that look he gets when he's really angry, but trying to control it because others are watching. He said I was being dramatic and ungrateful after everything his family had done for me. When I asked what exactly they had done, except eat my food and criticize me, Margaret started crying, saying I was cruel and selfish. Amanda straightened her shoulders slightly. That's when I realized I didn't recognize myself anymore. The old Amanda would never have put up with any of this. So I packed a bag while they were all arguing about me in the living room, and I left. I hugged her tightly. You can stay here as long as you need. She pulled back, her expression suddenly worried. What if they won't leave the house? What if they contest the deed like they were planning? Let Richard worry about that, I assured her. You focus on taking care of yourself right now. The next morning, Amanda and I visited Richard's office to discuss next steps. He was pleased she had left the hostile environment and outlined our strategy moving forward. We'll proceed with the eviction as planned, he explained. The documentation of financial abuse gives us additional leverage. Amanda, would you be willing to file for a temporary restraining order against Jackson based on his controlling behavior and financial exploitation? She hesitated only briefly before nodding. Yes, I don't want him anywhere near me right now. Over the next few days, Amanda began to share more about what life had been like in the villa over the past months. How Jackson had gradually isolated her from friends, controlled her movements under the guise of family obligations, and belittled her art until she began to believe she had no talent. How his family had criticized her constantly while demanding she serve them. How they had systematically replaced her possessions with theirs until almost nothing of hers remained visible in the home. I kept thinking it was temporary, she said quietly one evening as we shared tea. That once his family got back on their feet, things would return to normal, but there was never any intention of leaving, was there? I don't think so, I replied honestly. I think this was Jackson's plan all along, to move his entire family into the beautiful home you received as a gift. As the 30-day deadline approached, Jackson finally realized we were serious. He called Amanda repeatedly, his messages alternating between tearful apologies and thinly veiled threats. When she didn't respond, he showed up at my house, only to be turned away by the security guard I had hired. 3 days before the deadline, Richard received word that Jackson's family was finally packing. The security cameras showed moving vans in the driveway and family members carrying out possessions. Many more possessions than they had arrived with, I noted with concern. The day of the deadline, Amanda and I, accompanied by Richard and 2 security guards, went to inspect the villa. What we found was heartbreaking. While Jackson's family had indeed vacated, they had left destruction in their wake. Walls were damaged, where pictures had been ripped down. The beautiful hardwood floors were scratched from furniture being dragged rather than lifted. The custom kitchen cabinets had been emptied of all dishes and cookware. The garden had been trampled, plants uprooted. But the worst damage was to Amanda's former art studio. The space had been completely trashed. Paint had been smeared on the walls, the special lighting fixtures broken, the built-in easels torn out. Amanda stood in the center of the destroyed room, tears streaming down her face. They did this deliberately, she whispered, to punish me. I put my arm around her shoulders. They did this because they're vindictive, selfish people who couldn't stand losing their meal ticket. This isn't a reflection on you, Amanda. This is who they've always been. As we continued our inspection, we discovered that many of Amanda's personal belongings were missing. Family heirlooms, jewelry, even her winter clothes. Richard documented everything for potential legal action. This goes beyond the eviction issue, he noted grimly. This is criminal vandalism and theft. Later that evening, as we were preparing to leave, Jackson arrived alone. He looked disheveled, a far cry from his usually polished appearance. "Amanda, baby, we need to talk," he called from the driveway, ignoring the security guards who blocked his approach. "This is all a big misunderstanding. I've sent my family away. We can start over, just the two of us." Amanda walked to the edge of the porch, maintaining a safe distance. "Where did you send them, Jackson? To another house they can take over. Another woman they can criticize and control." "They're staying in a hotel," he admitted. "Just until we sort this out. I know they can be difficult sometimes, but they mean well." "Mean well?" Amanda's voice rose slightly. "They destroyed my studio. They stole my grandmother's jewelry. How is that meaning well?" Jackson's expression changed, the mask of contrition slipping. "If you had just been more accommodating, none of this would have happened. A good wife puts family first." "I did put family first," Amanda replied. "My family. Me and you. But that wasn't enough for you, was it? You wanted a servant, not a wife." "Don't be dramatic," he scoffed. "Look, the house is empty now. Let's move back in, just us. We can redecorate however you want." Amanda looked at him for a long moment. "Do you even know what colors I like, Jackson? What my favorite book is? What I dream about doing with my art?" His silence was telling. "That's what I thought," she said quietly. "I want a divorce." The rage that contorted his face confirmed Amanda had made the right decision. The security guards moved forward as Jackson took a threatening step toward the porch. "You'll regret this," he snarled. "You're nothing without me. A failed artist with a controlling mother." Amanda didn't flinch. "I'd rather be a failed artist than a successful fraud." As the security guards escorted him from the property, Jackson tried one last manipulation. "What about the villa? If we divorce, you'll lose half of it." Richard, who had been standing quietly nearby, stepped forward. "Actually, the property is solely in Amanda's name, protected by a prenuptial agreement clause in the deed. You have no claim to it whatsoever." The look of shock on Jackson's face would have been comical under different circumstances. He had married Amanda believing he would gain control of the valuable property, only to discover he had no legal claim to it at all. That night, Amanda stayed at the villa alone for the first time since her honeymoon. I offered to stay with her, but she declined. "I need to reclaim this space," she explained. "Make it mine again." As I left her standing in the empty living room, I saw something I hadn't seen in months: determination in her eyes and the faintest hint of a genuine smile. The weeks that followed were both challenging and healing for Amanda. She faced the daunting task of rebuilding not just her home, but her sense of self, after months of systematic emotional abuse. I was careful to support without overwhelming, offering help when asked, but giving her space to make her own decisions. The balance wasn't always easy to find. Years of maternal instinct made me want to sweep in and fix everything, but I knew Amanda needed to reclaim her independence at her own pace. She began with small changes to the villa, repainting rooms in colors she chose, replacing the heavy drapes Jackson's mother had insisted on with light, airy curtains that let in the California sunshine, clearing out the master bedroom of all traces of Jackson, moving to one of the guest rooms until she could bear to reclaim that space. The most significant project was the restoration of her art studio. The damage had been extensive, but rather than simply repairing it, Amanda decided to reimagine the space entirely. She worked with a local contractor to install different lighting, build new storage solutions, and create a layout that better suited her creative process. "They tried to destroy something precious to me," she explained as we reviewed the plans. "I'm not just fixing it, I'm making it better than before." Parallel to the physical rebuilding, Amanda began the harder work of emotional healing. Richard had recommended a therapist who specialized in recovery from emotional abuse, and Amanda attended weekly sessions. "Dr. Kaplan says I was a classic target," she told me after one session. "Independent but with a desire to please. Successful but modest about my achievements. Open-hearted and trusting. Does knowing that help?" I asked. She considered the question. "It helps me understand it wasn't my fault. that I didn't invite this somehow by being weak or stupid. Jackson was looking for someone with specific traits he could manipulate, and I happened to fit the profile. 3 months after the eviction, we were having coffee in Amanda's newly redesigned kitchen when she made a confession that broke my heart. "I saw the signs, Mom. Early on, before the wedding even. The way he would subtly criticize my choices. How he would get cold and distant if I disagreed with him. The little comments about my art being just a hobby. But I ignored them because I wanted so badly to believe I had found what you and Dad had." I reached for her hand. "Your father would never have treated me the way Jackson treated you." "I know that now," she said softly. "But I think I was trying to fill the void of growing up without him. Jackson seemed so confident, so certain about everything. I mistook control for strength." "We all make mistakes in love," I told her. "The important thing is that you found your way out." "Thanks to you," she smiled. "If you hadn't included that clause in the deed?" I shook my head. "I include those clauses in all my property transfers. It's just good business practice. But you're the one who found the courage to leave. To stand up to Jackson, when he gave you that ultimatum. I just provided the legal leverage." As the divorce proceedings moved forward, Jackson made several attempts to regain control. He sent pleading messages about reconciliation. When those failed, he tried threats about exposing private details of their marriage. When Amanda remained unmoved, he finally resorted to financial demands. Richard handled everything with calm efficiency. The documentation of financial abuse, unauthorized use of Amanda's inheritance and loans, taken in her name without her knowledge, gave us considerable leverage. In the end, Jackson agreed to a quiet, relatively quick divorce with a non-disclosure agreement that protected both parties from speaking publicly about the marriage. 6 months after the confrontation dinner, Amanda held a small art showing in her rebuilt studio. She had begun painting again. Her style evolved from her earlier work. The landscapes now contained subtle elements of disruption and restoration. A beautiful garden with a single broken path being mended. A serene lake with ripples spreading from a thrown stone. Destruction and renewal, side by side. Beth and several other friends Amanda had reconnected with attended along with a local gallery owner who expressed interest in featuring her work. It was a modest beginning, but an important one. As guests mingled in the studio, Amanda pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about the villa," she said quietly. "What about it?" "I'm not sure I want to stay here long term. There are too many memories even with all the changes I've made." I nodded, understanding completely. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you." "I know you will," she smiled. "That's one thing that never changed, even when everything else in my life was chaos. Your support was constant." "That's what real family does," I told her. "They support you becoming more yourself, not less." "I've been thinking about that a lot," Amanda said. "The difference between love and control. Jackson and his family talked constantly about family loyalty, but what they really meant was control. Who controls the resources, the space, even the narrative about what's happening?" "And real love?" I asked. "Real love is wanting the best for someone even when it doesn't benefit you directly. It's seeing them clearly and valuing who they truly are, not who you want them to be." She squeezed my hand. "Like how you gave me space to make my own mistakes even when it must have been killing you to watch." "It wasn't easy," I admitted. "But I trust you, I always have." As the year mark approached since the wedding that had begun this journey, Amanda had made her decision about the villa. She would sell it and use the proceeds to buy a smaller place closer to the coastline she loved to paint, with a separate studio building on the property. "I need a fresh start," she explained, "somewhere without ghosts." The day we listed the villa, Amanda and I stood in the driveway, looking at the property that had been the site of so much pain and ultimately growth. "Do you regret giving it to me?" she asked suddenly. "Knowing what happened?" I considered the question carefully. "I regret the pain you experienced, but I don't regret the gift itself. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come wrapped in the most painful packages." "What was your lesson in all this?" Amanda asked. "That I can't protect you from everything no matter how much I want to. That sometimes the best help I can offer is to step back and let you find your own strength. I smiled at her. And you did find it, Amanda. You're stronger now than you've ever been. She nodded slowly. I am. I know what I'll accept in my life now, and what I won't. I know my boundaries, and I'm not afraid to enforce them. That's a lesson worth the price we paid, I said softly. As we prepared to leave, Amanda paused for one last look at the villa. You know what I realized recently? The home you build isn't about the walls around you, but the love within you. Jackson and his family had a beautiful house, but they never created a home because they didn't know how to love without controlling. That's profound wisdom for someone your age. I told her, my heart swelling with pride. She smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that reached her eyes. I had a good teacher. As we drove away, I reflected on our journey. There would be more challenges ahead as Amanda continued to heal and rebuild her life. The scars of emotional abuse don't vanish overnight. But she was on her way, reclaiming her voice, her art, and her power one day at a time. The villa had been a gift that turned into a trap, but in the end it had also been the catalyst for Amanda's liberation. Sometimes the most important thing we can do for those we love is to help them find the strength to save themselves. Have you ever had to stand up for someone you love even when it was difficult? Or have you been in a situation where you needed to reclaim your power? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message of hope and resilience. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the strongest thing you can say is simply no more.